people like you and I have been adrenaline people. People like you and I have been high performance people. We understand that we're looking for that next level. But a lot of people will make the promise here, but as soon as it becomes comfortable, they slide. They don't do that. How do we get people to make the choice and change through positive psychology through this way?
It goes into a lot of different directions, right?
Sure.
One of the things, there are only so many, like, just because of how the way the brain works, right? There's only so many intervention points, right? And obviously, motivation is a big one, right? And I think there's multiple sides to this coin. I mean, one of the things that we have found about these kinds of peak experiences that we, these ecstatic experiences, is they're all intrinsically motivating, right? So if you can tie, rituals to it. I mean, for me, writing produces an altered state of consciousness. So what I do for a living produces, the flow experience for me, and it's tied to it, right? When I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to start writing, yes, I want to get stuff done. But what I'm, really hunting is, oh my God, I want that point where I'm going to forget myself and the words are going to fly out of me, and I'm going to look back later and go, who the hell did this?
Yeah, who wrote
right?
This is too good. Yeah.
That's what I'm hunting, and the fact that it shows up, that I actually understand can work and get it a little more frequently now, that's what gets me out of bed. So, I mean, on a certain level, I want to, and I think we make this point in Stealing the Fire, there's a way to kind of, tie these things, harness our own internal intrinsic motivation, right? And I on a totally different side, this is stuff we talk about at Stealing Fire, but it's stuff that I've been thinking about a lot. I think that high performers, grit's the funny word. Essentially we're talking about grit too, right?
Yeah.
And grit is one of these, Angela Duckworth introduced the term, psychologists are now saying, hey, wait a minute, it's conscientiousness, there's a big battle over whatever. And okay, so let's say all that is going on and the scientists are duking it about definitions, and I should acknowledge it. In my experience with top performers, and I'm, from business, but also from special operations and also from athletes, I think there are kind of 5 levels of grit, and I think top performers train all of them. And I think, by the way, the grit you're talking about is the one everybody's familiar with. It's perseverance. It's kick me in the teeth, whatever, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get up and make a change, right? Or the grit to implement a change is the grit to train your weaknesses, right? And which I think is key. Every year, and I'm actually going through this process right now in my own life, I do it at the end of every year, I try to identify 5 to 10 weaknesses in my game, whatever they are, that if I could change this one thing, would make a massive 10x difference in my life. And, some of them are small. I'll give you an example of this year's. It turns out that one of the key differences between peak performers and everybody else is how many times you chew your food. I know that sounds crazy, but people who have trouble with their weight or people who don't have to perform at super high levels will tend to chew their food. They'll inhale. They'll chew their food 10 to 15 times. Peak performers, because it's the way you get all the nutrition from the food, will chew their food 40 to 45 times, right? I inhale my food, and yet I run my body at a level that I need the nutrition, right? So it sounds like a stupid thing, but I'm retraining myself to chew my food. That's one example of, right? And there's also stuff in my business game. So I think there's a second level of grit, the grit to train a weakness. And I think that's as key. I think and this is, I think, equally key is, and this is what David Foster Wallace so brilliantly talks about in that essay, This is Water, which I think is so beautiful, that you have to control your thoughts, right? Top performers, they do, and if you can't, you put practices in place like respiration, mindfulness, meditation, right? Because it gives you some control over your thoughts. You realize that without that, you're sunk. And I think that's part of the problem. When you talk about the problems on Monday, right? Like, you're talking about a train your weakness problem. You had this something bad happened. You're like, oh my God, I can't keep doing this thing that I'm doing. I got to change, right? In a sense, you're trying to train a weakness. I also think some of it is My friend Scott Barry Kaufman, who's at the University of Pennsylvania, looked at personality. Can you train your personality? Big 5 characteristics. Can you change those things? Openness to experience, conscientious, whatever. And the answer used to be no, not at all. We're stuck with them. Now the answer is yes, but slowly.
Right.
Right? And that's the thing we always tell people with the Flow Genome Project. Also, even with Flow, right? You have to go slow to go fast.
If what you've heard on Flow Research Collective Radio has been helpful, please consider doing us a solid and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening to this. Reviews help us connect to a wider audience so we can get these peak performance principles out to more people.